One thing that's true about coalitions is that these are political things that we're doing. And we know that the political is the personal. So I'd like us to start by just sharing a story of how you got into doing coalitional work. What brought you to this work from a personal perspective? And Pascal, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, great. Is my mic on? Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say I'm so honored to be here. I wish I had half the coffee that Greg did, but he really brought the energy, and so thank you so much for having me. As you said it, the personal is always political. As a cisgendered Afro-Caribbean daughter of Haitian immigrants, I knew that the multiple identities I hold open doors in some spaces and close doors in other spaces. So the personal has always been political. And so I always say that I was an advocate at an early age, not by choice, but rather by circumstance. I came up of age during the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis here in the United States, in New York in particular. And folks may remember that they had the 4 H's, right? Haitians, hemophiliacs, homosexuals, and what they called whores, sex workers. And they blamed this group of folks for bringing HIV/AIDS into this country, right? And so at a young age, I had to manage stigma, discrimination in the classroom, in the playground, losing friends. My mother was a registered nurse. She couldn't touch her patients. My cousins worked at Red Lobster. They couldn't serve any biscuits. Like, it was, ubiquitous, and no one is untouched. And so the FDA, I believe in 1990, had banned blood from these 4 groups and, labeled them as, bad blood. My mom was an organizer as well. So she was part of this Haitian Nurses Association, and they organized and they worked with this group called the Haitian Enforcement Against Racism that led a march on Brooklyn Bridge. And I don't know if folks remember that time in 1990, but I remember my little 9-year-old self was making signs with the Haitian Nurses Association and writing it, because I knew exactly what we were fighting for. And so went out there and was marching and demanding justice with 50,000 different stakeholders. And it was beyond just, Haitian identifying people, right? We had faith leaders, we had students, we had lawyers, we had neighbors, co-conspirators, and other allies who were part of us. And it was there where I realized that coalition building is far beyond just shared identity, right? But there's a shared purpose. And that type of, injustice called for that coming together. And so that was my early indications, just the power of seeing people who may not be in the same room together, but came together for this moment because justice demanded it.
Excellent. Therese, Allison, would either of you like to jump in next?
Okay, great. Well, that was so beautiful. Mine's not quite as beautiful. I was an only child, and I was adopted. And so I have felt that I was adopted from Kashmir, India. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a pretty war-torn area that is kind of under attack between 2 countries. And so I have just felt so privileged that my parents chose to adopt me and brought me over to the US, and I just have felt it is my duty to give back. So I have done so since I was little. My first intro into coalition building, you're all gonna laugh, but as an only child, I didn't have any siblings. So I started a coalition of only children so that we could all talk, and because I didn't have any siblings, and I'm like, well, I'm lonely, and my parents are boring. And so my parents traveled a lot, so I grew up kind of, and this is not a woe for me sad story, this is just building up friends and having that. So I started that coalition of only children. So really understanding that, then going through high school and in college and my first job, really took my career on, we get so much farther if we talk to the person to our left and to our right. And that wasn't a political comment, but that does also work here too. But that was like my intro.
Awesome. Allison.
Sure. I'm going to ask also, can you hear me? Yes, okay. So I think for me, I grew up in a liberal Protestant household, and so I was raised in a tradition where we were constantly doing types of service. And so when I went to college, I was, in my undergrad, I was a rape crisis hotline worker, and we also did a lot of work in high schools. And it was in Western Massachusetts, and we would have once a month casework for 3 years, and every month, different organizations would come to the table. And there were certain things in Western Mass that needed to change, and it was clear how quickly it moved the needle when everyone was at the table. So the hospitals, the social work team, if it was an academic issue, the academic colleagues, And so that gave me an indication when I went to social work school, like, oh, people have to be all working together. And so I think throughout my career, that has been what I have seen over and over and over again, that we are just simply stronger if we work together and can recognize where our blind spots are, because everyone has blind spots, no matter who you are and where you live and where you come from. And so understanding different perspectives and being able to wrap that up in a bow and work on it through policy and advocacy is really powerful.
Fantastic. I wasn't intending to answer this question, but it just feels unfair to expose all of your backstories. So I will say quickly that my first exposure to coalition building and to making political asks was as a teenager. So I was in the foster care system in Massachusetts, and as a teen, got exposed to some opportunities to tell leaders, tell decision makers, what it was that we needed from the system in order to be well and to thrive. And really parlayed that opportunity to talk to the commissioner of DSS and to state legislators about the fact that we needed normal rules to be able to sleep over at our friends' houses, to be able to take field trips into an entire career that led from that. So thank you all for sharing, and I felt moved to as well. But that leads us to our second question, which is about why do coalitional work? Why collaborate? And so when you're collaborating across organizations especially, it's crucial to think about how we can and must shape the decisions of state and local and federal government. And so I'm curious to hear from each of you, from your experience working in coalition, where does that value lie? How have you been able to pull some of those levers? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Good.
I'll do it. You go.
Okay.
Not everyone all at
All right,
once.
well, I'm happy to start. And so, I will say, so I'm in the supportive housing space, and anyone who's kind of paying attention, this federal government is insistent on taking away poor people's housing. And so we are really in the thick of it right now. And I would say my 2 decades of policy and systems change and organizing work, I have never felt in deeper coalition than I am right now, right? I think what makes this moment, so striking is not just the scale of the threat. 170,000 people nationwide are at risk of losing their housing. In New York State, that's over 15,000 people as early as February 1st. And that's 14,000 households, right? So it's not just the scale of what's at stake, but then it's also the scale of the alignment that I'm experiencing. I'm on the calls every single day with national partners, statewide partners, local, rural, suburban. Everyone is seeing themselves in this fight. And I think what makes coalitions, this coalition, I think, it's not just symbolic, right? We're all here because there's a shared self-interest, but there's also shared values. And I believe that for coalitions to work, every stakeholder has to see themselves in the fight, right? Mm-hmm. And when they do that, that's when they lean in. Housing touches every part of civic life, right? Employers need stable workforce. Communities need stable environments, right? People to be working and purchasing goods. Governments, invest in housing. They deeply subsidize housing at the state, federal, and local level. And also banks, right, and lenders, they invest in underwrite housing as well. So it's important that our messaging reaches across broad constituencies, because again, that's what allows them to really lean in. And I believe that the bigger tent that we builds bigger power. And we get over the turf issues that come sometimes with coalitions, if we're being real about it. And I think we create the space for more ingenuity, because this is what this moment demands of us. And I would just say, New York has really been a national leader on this, and it's because of, seeing the power of our collective force, really. And since we heard in March, right, there was whispers of cutting HUD and cutting funding to affordable housing, we showed up, and in a matter of days, 500 to 700, I don't know exact number, showed up on the steps of City Hall, and since then we've been going. And our Republican leaders in Long Island, congressional members, actually reached out to HUD. No other state has done that, and it's because of the really strong coalition, whether it's aging, economic development, all of us coming together and understanding that housing is such a basic and foundational human right. And so, I'm really enthused. We have a long road to go, but I'm very encouraged by this moment.
I agree, and I want to just echo your points that are so beautifully said. It is, to fight fire, you must have a bigger fire. Let's just make that clear. So we need to be united. Every single organization needs to stand up for what's happening now. We need to be united. We need to work together because that is the only way we are going to get through whatever the federal government comes at us with over the next 3 years, right? So we need to work together now. I think, and if you know me or we've worked together, you know that I'm always trying to bring in transportation, always trying to bring in the Business Council. Shout out to Heather Brissetti, Mulligan, who I think is amazing. I bring the Business Council into 1,000 things. Everybody should be listening. Everybody should be working together. And a critical example of this is I do a lot of federal legislation work. And I met with one of the committees that was unhappy with advocates. They say, everybody just complains, no one offers solutions. So I said, okay, give me 2 days. Went out to a number of organizations, got their opinion. We got a letter. We wrote the letter with a recommendation. Problem was solved in that case, right? So that was something that was going to have a huge impact on the workforce sector with WIOA, which is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. But it only worked because we were able to get everybody on the same page very quickly. So it's knowing your network, thinking outside of your network, building that coalition, and if there's an organization where you're like, oh, they haven't been involved, pull them in because they should care. They don't have a choice not to in this present day.
If we've been watching the American Revolution special, we're reminded of that slogan, join or die.
Yes.
And that feels particularly relevant in this moment.
Truly, I just want to say, I watched that too. I was worried we weren't going to win. I was like, I think we gotta, oh no, my mic's went. The guy's going to be so mad. But yeah, I'm like, oh crap, how does this end? I guess the question is, you could say maybe we didn't win. But
Still an open question.
Still an open question, but yes, that was fabulous.
Allison, how about you?
I think so. Your question was about, why this work. I think that for me and for the work that we do at Live On, so much of it is about supporting the people who are doing the work. So I've been, I'm sure you all get asked to be on advisory boards. This is like my own hill I'll die on, where it's like a lot of really wonderful people, and it's usually, and often it's like, I'm gonna stick my foot in my mouth. Often it's like a government entity will say you have to join this you have to form this advisory board. There's no money, there's no staff, there's no time for lobbying, there's no, it is crushing. It is crushing to have really great ideas in the room with no ability to move the needle because everybody has a day job. So I think of our work as coalition work is representing the people who are working in community, right? Like you all, know what needs to happen. It's not like these are issues of humanity and community, things that people know they need, housing, food, right? These are jobs. These are very basic human needs. And the coalition's job is to raise the flame and provide the platform and foundation through which we can lobby jointly. Right. We can share resources jointly. And there's no more important time than, as we've just been saying, is what is happening now, so that the work of the provider can be focused on their community and they can weigh in and tell us what's needed, and we can have the ability to make those changes and to push for what's needed. So I feel like it's like a conduit.
Can
Indeed.
I say one thing?
Please.
Okay. Allison's point is so perfect, and I want you to take away what she said. People who are making the decisions that are affecting frontline workers and the people who are doing the work are not the ones that are drafting the laws. And that has got to change. The people who are doing the work need to have an opinion. They need to have an influence on how that the laws and the decisions that are affecting them are being drafted and changed.
Excellent. So I think this is raising an issue that leads right into our next question. So issue number one, oftentimes the reasons that coalitions emerge is because people's needs aren't being met by the public sector. And reason number two is that to solve those issues requires overcoming structural barriers. The way that these systems are built, there's barriers baked in. And so I'm gonna start with you, Therese, on this one, okay. Particularly because you live in a kind of meta coalition, organizing United Way's themselves, which are doing coalitional work. Yeah. So talk to us about some of the barriers that you've faced and what you've done to try to overcome them.
Okay, so we have 32 United Ways in New York, and I talk to all of them what feels like every day. And shout out to Grace Bonilla, the United Way of New York City president. She is just so wonderful, so she deserves all the flowers. Okay, each part of New York State has its own issues, right? And I might have some United Ways that work really great with their county or their state or the federal government, some that do not. So one challenge is that not enough of the state agencies and local agencies talk to each other. And that is a problem. The system was not built for them to communicate smoothly, and it is crumbling. So working with the state agencies collectively is part of my role, is saying, okay, Chautauqua County is going through this, Buffalo is going through this, Rochester is going through this, but New York City, this is a problem. So one of the barriers is that the state agencies do not talk. The data systems are not reliable, and they're not in sync. And then there is not enough flexible spending that is allowed. So these are some of the issues that we're dealing with. How I have addressed them. Oh, God, I wish. I will say two things. One, I have been working with Department of Health on the 1115 medical waiver. And if you're not familiar with that, that is about as successful as burnt popcorn right now. And it is, and we're really trying to look and say, where are the pieces crumbling, right? And where are the systems not talking to each other? No, really, it's a mess, I'm telling you. Yes, and the smell, just like popcorn, it's like, oh. So I would say that's something that we're working out, right? And we don't have a lot of time because we got to spend that money and we got to help the people, right? So working out that, I would also say that a lot of the state agencies come to me and say, we're having a very specific problem. Can you talk to other agencies on our behalf? And that has been something we have done too. We've worked out a number of issues relating to work requirements as well as income disregard issues, which is a wonderful opportunity that NIATEP, which is here present in the room, had passed a couple years ago. Also working on, and last but not least, really looking at the communication between multiple sides. Often, United Way, because we are bipartisan, is responsible for negotiating between the parties and then presenting ideas. And that is something we take very seriously and we are doing.
Pascal, maybe I can toss this to you.
Yeah, no, so many thoughts on the waiver. I survived district, right? And so this next iteration, everything she said is just so spot on, right? And I think, the value and the purpose, I think, of coalitions is that, when we come together, we see the people's full humanity, right? We go to our state agencies that see people in pieces. People don't come in pieces, right? And so when you center people in their full humanity, our work is to make it visible for these state agencies, right? I'm in the world of housing, but housing deals with aging. It deals with economic, opportunities. It deals with, folks falling in love and making families. But those are separate path lanes for our housing, for our state and city agencies. They're seeing them as distinct pieces. So the work that we do is breaking down those silos. But one thing I want to say, just even among our coalitions, is that we love to sometimes to be in love with the problem, right? We love to be just like, these systems, they don't talk to each other. How many times, an agency asks me to talk to another agency, which is like down the hall from them, right? Yes. But we also have to dismantle silos in our own coalitions as well. We have to model what we're trying to ask for, right? And so, while we're working to dismantle those silos at the, government level, it's important that we look internally among coalitions and recognize that there is overlap. We have to have that intersectional lens to our work. And again, I think bringing that and making that visible to government is important.
Indeed. Any thoughts from you, Allison?
I agree with the panel, my colleagues. I think that I have a lot of thoughts. I think that there can be a lot of territory and a lot of things that have historically stopped us from working together, and that is like freaking manufactured, right? Like that is purposeful and drives all of us and all of our work. And again, for people who work with people in the community, that is obvious. People are whole. And so presenting that option and trying to connect with each other through the work and through the policy work should be the number one role.
Coordination.
Yes.
Okay, So I'm going to make a note to the audience. So you've heard from 4 people here that are working in the civic sector, in the nonprofit sector. We've mentioned a lot about the public sector, but there's no public sector person yet on stage to talk about that experience. So at this point, what I'd like to do is have the door open and to have Scott French, the administrator of HRA, walk through.
Very dramatic.
A dramatic entrance.
Because we're in coalition on stage too. And what we want to hear from you about is the experience of coalitional work within government.
Sure, so I think 2 different things I want to talk about, right? I think I would be remiss, and as Pascal mentioned, right, at the federal level right now, there are a variety of policies that are really focused on undoing the social safety net, right? And at HRA, our whole purpose is to keep the social safety net going so that people who do need supports can access it. And so whether it's what's currently happening with SNAP, what's about to happen with Medicaid, the work around housing, or all of the other things we're hearing, that is sort of a real challenge. What I can say is, as it relates to SNAP, what I think it has sort of galvanized is it's really, I think, coalesced coalitions between the city, the state, and other organizations very quickly and allowed us, I think, to get over the barriers that kind of can be in place at times. And so, you know, I think me being here is one of those, right? Oftentimes, HRA isn't thought of in the space of workforce development, WIOA, right? It's usually like HRA's programs are over here, and then the workforce development field is here. And I can say in the last, you know, several months, that has really broken down, whether being invited here, lots of work and conversations going on with the Workforce Development Board, those in that space, and a collective, like, what can we do together to support people so that they keep their benefits? And I think that is like the greatest example of taking a very difficult time to sort of cut through everything and get to a coalition where everyone is thinking like, okay, what can I bring to this? What can I bring to this? Because no one organization, no one agency can do it all. They shouldn't do it all. And so that, I think, is a space in which stuff is really working and we are all aligned. That's not always how it works. So, you know, I think also I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that, you know, in normal course, there can oftentimes, I think, be a challenge where regulation meets operations and service. And there can be a really difficult disconnect at times when policy doesn't connect to practice as simply as it should. And so at the city level, oftentimes, right, I'm tasked with taking state regulations or federal regulations and then turning into a program. And I think, you know, everyone here can probably speak to at times, there are bureaucratic hurdles that get in the way of, you know, it would be so easy if you did this, and sometimes from a city perspective, right, it takes us a little longer to get there. But I think, you know, being able to talk about it openly in a space like this is really important, right? Being able to acknowledge that, like, from a city perspective, there are times where it's really challenging to work with me, right? And my job is to keep on coming to the table, right? And listening and getting the feedback from, you know, coalitions like this, and then looking to see how we can improve things. And I think there have been real spaces where, you know, it might have taken a little bit longer than we wanted, but we all got to the same place. And so I can just say for myself and for Commissioner Park at the Department of Social Services, right, our goal is always, we will show up at the table even if we may have slightly different perspectives, because we all need to understand at the end of the day, our goals are the same.
Indeed. And I think, you know, one thing that I try to remind some of my colleagues who've never worked in the public sector is that people go into jobs like yours because they believe in the mission of the agency and they want to deliver the services to New Yorkers, and they want them to be excellent. And you're working under constraints. And it is our job as folks on the outside to help give you a push when you need it, to give you advice when you need it, but not to presume ill will. And I think that's crucial. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to start with you, Allison. But we've been hearing a lot over the last day plus about plumbing, about the pipes behind our systems and our politics. And we've been debating, maybe with different perspectives, about whether we should be continuing to patch those pipes or creating blueprints to replumb the house. And so what I really want to hear is about disconnection, where there's some pipes that are going the wrong way, and those things being the things that keep us disconnected and siloed. Where have you had experience with that?
I think two main things come to mind. The first is that we cannot really make transformational change without incremental change happening at the same time. So we can't expect that, so Live On represents all the community services for older people in the city and state. You know, we cannot expect that we're going to have a radical change in how we think about age and aging and how to support people in their communities without making sure that the NORC or the Meals on Wheels program actually has the money that it needs from the council or the city to run vans. Like, it doesn't happen. You cannot have the loftiest goals in the world without fixing the pipes. And the pipes need to be fixed because this, you know, the systems that exist were set up in a certain time for a very specific reason. And so we need to really look at what needs to happen and how to support people so that they can support themselves, their neighbors, their families, right, in the best way that is most appropriate for them, and that they want, right? Not that we need to decide that they want. So I think, like, looking at incremental and transformational change at the same time is really important, and that's the power paradox, right? Both things can be true at the same time. The second is that the reality is that there's only so much attention that people have in their brains. Like, there's only so much work that our government partners and our foundational partners and our coalition partners can keep in their head. So it behooves us to be aligned in what needs to happen. And so taking those incremental changes, like we do a lot of work, I think all of us do a lot of work with the Just Pay work that HSC is leading, together with NYC ETC, right? So making sure that people have adequate salaries so they don't age into poverty is something that is a core value of Live on New York. So making sure that we are aligned with that our government partners are aligned with that, because it's so easy to get fractured at every moment of the journey. So I think in addition to fixing the pipes, making sure the plumbing is heading in the right direction, that we actually have clean water on the other side, we need to make sure that we know, like, who actually needs the water, because there's like many different points in there. But I think if I could just underscore, like, my last point is, which I'm not saying very clearly, is that we need to align what we're saying on very core things, because there's only so much attention, and we cannot expect our government partners to pay attention to all of it if we are completely saying different things constantly. It's not fair. It's not fair to them. They can't hold all of those things at once. And especially for the incoming administration, the reality is that they already have priorities. They also have to make sure that when the federal government starts to dismantle things like SNAP and housing, that they can fill those things in. So we need to, as people on the ground, as people in policy, people running coalitions, we need to make sure that we understand every level of which pipe that we want to fix so that we can raise that to a higher level.
Indeed. So to not torture the metaphor too much with the pipes, like, we need to keep patching the leaks because people rely on this for their drinking water and to water their gardens. But that doesn't mean we can't walk and chew gum at the same time while reimagining what these pipes might look like at a moment where we might have the political will and resources to replace them. Awesome. Pascal.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, when we do systems change work, I hear folks like, we should burn it all down, right? And start over. The last and the least among us are the ones who are going to get hurt.
Yes.
And sometimes it is evolution and it can't be revolution. I want revolution in my heart every day, but I know that people who are farthest on the margins will be the ones that are hurt, right? And that's where, you know, that's how we get free, when we work from the margins. And I just want to get to the comment before about, like, you know, the tug of war, the push and pull with government. I call that healthy tension. At the end of the day, I'm an advocate. I don't work for Scott, you know, like, but I have a healthy tension, a relationship, and I wouldn't be doing my job representing 200 nonprofits, you know, who provide and develop and operate supportive housing, as well as about 200 affiliated and corporate members, if I just went to these meetings like, you know what, I get it, I know it's hard, the pipes are messed up. No, And especially, so again, I wouldn't be doing my job. So it's about getting in right relationship with our partners and understanding that we are all navigating systems that we didn't create. But at the same time, if we operate as they're designed, we are complicit in the outcomes. So we can't be complaining. And so that is our job. I'm the complainer in chief when it comes to my job. And Scott knows that. And I understand that he is looking at federal, state, and city regs. But I'm still going to come to you in the fact that in supportive housing, right now, we make it too difficult for people to get into housing. We have over 64,000 supportive housing units, about 5,000 in development across the state. It's in every single county. But we have 18 different programs. We have 50 eligibility criteria run by 9 different government agencies that don't necessarily talk to each other. I can't keep beating this drum that it's not working. I want to be at the table to co-create, especially the people who are most impacted, to redesign that system. We have to make it easier, flatter for people to get into housing.
Indeed, and that coalition implies the nonprofits and the advocates, but also the community members and also the government agencies being together, collaborating on imagining that new future. Therese, what's your thoughts here?
Yes, I'll be quick, I promise. I just have to say, I view United Way's role in making all of your work possible, because it is our job, because nothing is possible for any human being if they don't have a roof over their head, clothes on their body, food in their stomachs, right? So that's how I view United Way's role in this. I have 32 United Ways that need to wake up every day and make sure that in their communities, the individuals are clothed, homed, have adequate food, access to health insurance, access to jobs, and pathways that they can partake in. So, we released an ALICE report, which is Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Report, and it is essentially telling how New Yorkers are. It is a national thing, but I'm focusing on New York. 48% of the households in New York are not able to meet basic needs, right? They are not able to function, and that's not even counting Wi-Fi. I just want to let you know, that's not counting Wi-Fi, which is considered a luxury. So I view my role in this as I need to make sure New Yorkers can live. And I make sure that New Yorkers can New York. And making it possible for them to partake in all of the wonderful programs and opportunities.
Awesome. Scott, I'm going to invite you to respond to this pipes question before we move on to our lightning round to close us out.
Sure. So I think everything that everyone said here is very important. And it is important, as Pascal said, for folks, right, to come to me and say, like, I understand, but also, right? And so that is something, it is my job to do 2 things at once. One is to make sure the 3 million people in New York City a day who need the services and programs that I run get the services and programs that I run, right? So, right, as you said, we can't burn it all down because people need stuff every day. But I also need to make sure that I'm paying real attention, especially the income I'm getting from the communities, whether it's impacted individuals, coalitions, CBOs who are working with us, to hear when they repeatedly say, this is a problem. So just short example, right? As it relates to homelessness prevention and housing services at HRA, DSS, all of that was very dispersed for a variety of reasons for quite some time, right? And understanding and listening to the community that we had to try to make things easier, right? We just recently reorganized our structure so that all homeless prevention programs are together, so that they work together, they can leverage what's going on. Similarly, on the housing services side, all housing has been brought together because it was disparate. Some stuff was in DHS, some stuff was HRA, some stuff was in DSS, which meant inefficiency, right? So while I can't change everything at once, what I can do is bring all of that together. There's one chief housing services officer who is responsible for making sure all of that stuff is working together and identifying the ways in which we start breaking down the steps, the barriers, and other types of things. So, those are things that we have to be doing at the same time to sort of meet of fix the pipes, but also rebuild the infrastructure.
Fantastic. 10 seconds apiece, lightning round question. First 100 days, what does the Mamdani administration need to do to support the critical work of coalitions? And we'll start with you, Scott, and come back to me.
Sure. I think the Mamdani administration, I think through their campaign and the transition that they're currently going through, I think has shown that they are very much committed to coalition building. We have several members of the transition committee on this stage with us. Greg, probably people in the audience. And I think that that is a testament to the fact that they brought 400 people in from a variety of different communities, organizations, issue areas together to really work on this. So to me, that indicates, really leading from a coalition and a very big table approach.
Mm-hmm. Listen deeply, listen consistently, listen with transparency, with accountability, with humility, and listen to the people closest to the problem. They are closest to the solution.
I totally agree with you. Yes.
Yes.
I think ask, listen, and act with transparency.
Awesome.
I love that. Okay. I would say one thing, they already have done such a great job in having Grace Bonilla as the co-chair of the transition team. So they've already extended an arm out. So what I want to see is more of that. I want them to go to the people who oppose them in the campaign. I want them to work together. I want to prove the haters wrong, and I want them to do that through clear and decisive work, while also protecting the people who have stood by them and are working with them, because that is a huge part too.
Indeed. And I'll end us by saying that I want them to prove to New York that government, when run well, delivers for the people.
Yes. Woo!
All right. Let's give a hand to the panel one last time. Thank you, everyone.